She offered one meal equals one night, but he didn't want her body, only her soul. She had arrived here from a small village, carrying only a worn-out bag, a few clothes, and a heart full of hope. She had imagined the city to be full of opportunities, a place where dreams could come true if one worked hard enough. But reality hit her hard, almost as soon as she stepped off the crowded bus. Every day was a struggle. Finding food was a challenge, and every night she shivered under the thin blanket of her rented room. Her stomach often ached from hunger, and her mind was clouded with worry about what the next day would bring. Rahima walked the streets aimlessly that evening, trying to find something to eat. The smell of fried food and sweet bread filled the air, teasing her senses and reminding her of how hungry she was. She passed bustling markets, crowded cafes, and busy restaurants, but her pockets were empty. Each step she took felt heavier than the last, and tears threatened to spill down her cheeks. She was proud and had always believed in doing things honestly, but hunger has a way of breaking even the strongest will. As she wandered through the streets, she noticed a small, quiet cafe tucked away in a narrow lane. Its lights glowed warmly, and a few people were sitting inside, chatting softly and sipping their drinks. Rahima hesitated at the entrance, unsure if she could even afford a meal. She pressed her hand against the door, feeling the warmth from the inside seep through her fingers. The cafe smelled of fresh bread, coffee, and something sweet she couldn't name. Her stomach growled, reminding her of the hunger that had been gnawing at her all day. Inside, the cafe was calm, a stark contrast to the chaos outside. A few people sat quietly, reading newspapers or working on laptops. Behind the counter, a young man with kind eyes and a gentle smile moved with ease, preparing drinks and food with care. Rahima's eyes followed him as he served a customer, noticing the way he treated everyone politely, never rushing or showing frustration. She had learned early in life that not everyone in this city would treat her kindly, especially if she looked vulnerable or desperate. Yet something about this man made her pause, made her feel that maybe, just maybe, there was someone who could see her as a person rather than a burden. Her thoughts raced, torn between pride and desperation. She had never imagined herself in this position, offering anything less than honesty and hard work. But hunger had a way of clouding judgment. With a deep breath, she approached the counter, her voice trembling slightly. "Excuse me, sir, I have no money, but I am very hungry." Her words faltered as she glanced down, ashamed of even speaking them. The man behind the counter looked at her carefully, his expression softening. "It's okay. You can sit down." "I'll bring you something," he said gently. Rahima blinked in surprise. He didn't ask her why she had no money. He didn't judge her. He simply nodded toward a small, empty table near the window. Rahima hesitated, unsure if this was real or just a dream. She had been treated harshly before, dismissed, ignored, or worse, taken advantage of. She had learned to protect herself, to hide her vulnerability. But there was something in the man's eyes, a warmth that made her want to trust him, even for a moment. Slowly, she walked to the table and sat down, her hands clutching the edge nervously. Minutes later, the man returned with a plate of warm food and a glass of water. The aroma was irresistible. Rahima's stomach growled again, and she felt tears rise to her eyes. She had expected scolding, rejection, or ridicule, but instead she was met with kindness. She stared at the food for a moment, overwhelmed, before picking up her fork and taking a small bite. The taste was simple, but it was enough to make her sigh in relief. Her hunger was still there, but it was now accompanied by a sense of comfort she had not felt in weeks. As she ate, her mind wandered back to the harsh realities outside the cafe. Life had not been kind to her, and she often felt invisible, like no one cared. She had survived by keeping her pride intact, refusing to ask for help. Yet now, sitting in this warm cafe, she realized that help could come from unexpected places. She looked at the man behind the counter, feeling a strange mix of gratitude and nervousness. She didn't know him, yet she felt a connection as if he understood her in ways no one else had. When she finished eating, she felt a small spark of courage. She leaned forward slightly, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know how to thank you. I don't have any money." Her eyes met his, searching for judgment but found only patience. The man smiled kindly. "You don't need to thank me, just take care of yourself. That's enough." Rahima's heart ached with a mixture of shame and relief. She had grown up learning that the world was cruel, and that people often only helped when there was something in it for them. Yet here was someone helping her without asking for anything in return. She wanted to tell him that she wished she could do something to repay him, but the words stuck in her throat. Pride and desperation clashed within her, leaving her feeling vulnerable in a way she had not felt for a long time. In a moment of impulsive honesty, she said something that shocked even herself. If you want, I could stay with you for a night for this meal." The words hung in the air, heavy and frightening. She immediately regretted saying them, wishing she could take them back. Her cheeks burned and she looked away, ashamed. The man's expression did not change to anger or disgust, as she had feared. Instead, he leaned back slightly and looked at her with a calm, steady gaze. There was no judgment in his eyes, only something deeper, understanding, patience, and something almost like sadness for the struggles she had endured. He didn't respond immediately. He simply nodded toward her, as if to say, "Sit, breathe, and let's talk." That night, Rahima did not leave the cafe. Instead, she found herself talking to him, opening up about her life, her fears, and the hardships that had led her to this point. He listened carefully, never interrupting, never judging. For the first time in a long while, Rahima felt seen, truly seen. She realized that her offer, though desperate, was not met with anger or exploitation. Instead, it became a bridge, a way to connect with someone who valued her as a person, not just her body or what she could give. Hours passed and the cafe emptied, leaving only the two of them. The man, whose name was Imran, shared stories of his own life, his struggles, and how he had learned to treat others with kindness. Rahima listened, fascinated, feeling a sense of safety she hadn't felt in years. She realized that he had not been drawn to her out of desire, but out of compassion. He cared for her soul, for who she was as a human being, not for the temporary offer she had made in desperation. By the time Rahima left the cafe that night, the world outside felt a little less harsh. She still had struggles ahead, and hunger would not magically disappear, but something inside her had changed. She had encountered a rare kindness, a connection that went beyond survival or need. And though she did not yet understand the full significance of that night, she knew that it would stay with her forever, guiding her in ways she could not yet imagine. Rahima walked back to her small room with a sense of hope she had almost forgotten. The city was still loud, still overwhelming, but now it felt like a place where compassion could exist, where people could see each other as more than just strangers passing by. She curled up under her thin blanket, her stomach full and her heart lighter. For the first time in weeks, she slept without fear, without shame, and without the crushing weight of desperation. She dreamed not of survival alone, but of the possibility that someone could truly care for her, and that the human soul, even in the darkest moments, could recognize another soul. After that first night at the cafe, Rahima found herself thinking about Imran constantly. His calm presence, his kind eyes, and the way he had treated her with respect even when she had offered something desperate, it all lingered in her mind like a gentle flame in the darkness of her life. She had expected judgment, rejection, maybe even anger. Instead, she had met understanding. That night had awakened a small hope inside her, one that had been buried under months of fear, hunger, and loneliness. The next day, Rahima returned to the cafe. She wasn't sure if Imran would remember her or if he would treat her the same way. Part of her was nervous, worried that he might scold her or turn her away. But as soon as she walked in, she saw him behind the counter, arranging plates of pastries with his usual quiet attention. When he noticed her, his face lit up with a welcoming smile. "Good morning," he said simply, as if nothing extraordinary had happened the night before. "Would you like something to eat?" Rahima nodded, her voice barely audible. "Yes, thank you." She followed him to a small table by the window, and for a moment the world outside, the noise, the chaos, the cold, seemed to disappear. Here in this small cafe there was warmth, safety, and a sense of calm she had not felt in a long time. As she ate, Imran spoke softly, asking about her day, her journey, and her life before the city. Rahima hesitated at first, unsure how much to reveal. She had grown accustomed to hiding her true self, protecting her vulnerabilities from the harsh judgment of others. Yet there was something different about Imran. He did not rush her. He did not push for answers. He simply listened, giving her space to speak when she was ready. I came here alone," Rahima began slowly. "I left my village because life there, it was hard. My family, they tried to survive, but there wasn't enough for all of us. I thought the city would be better. I thought I could find work, food, a place to live. But it's harder than I imagined." Her voice trembled as she spoke, but she continued, feeling a strange sense of relief in telling someone her truth. Imran nodded, his eyes full of understanding. "I know it's not easy. The city can be overwhelming, especially when you are on your own. But you are stronger than you think. You've made it this far, haven't you?" Rahima smiled faintly, a small spark of pride flickering inside her. "I've survived," she said quietly. "But sometimes surviving isn't enough. Sometimes it feels like the world doesn't care if you live or die." Imran reached across the table, placing a gentle hand near hers, though not touching it. "The world may seem cruel, but there are people who care. And sometimes we find them in the most unexpected places." His words were simple, but they carried a weight that made Rahima feel as if someone finally understood her struggles. In the following days, Rahima continued to visit the cafe. She would sit quietly, sometimes eating, sometimes just watching people pass by outside. Imran always made sure she had something to eat, but he never accepted anything in return, and he never reminded her of her desperate offer from that first night. Instead, he treated her as an equal, as someone worthy of attention and care. Slowly, Rahima began to share more of her story. She told him about the village she had left behind, the family she had missed, and the dreams she had once held. She spoke of her longing for education, of her desire to make a better life, and of the fear that she might never find a place where she truly belonged. Imran listened with patience, asking gentle questions and offering advice when appropriate. He encouraged her to think beyond mere survival, to consider her skills, her talents, and the possibilities that the future might hold. For Rahima, these conversations were transformative. She had spent so long feeling invisible, as if her existence was a burden to the world. Yet here was someone who valued her thoughts, her feelings, and her dreams. He cared not for what she could offer physically, but for who she was as a person. That realization was new and profoundly moving for her. She began to see herself through a different lens, someone capable, worthy, and deserving of respect. Despite the kindness she received at the cafe, life outside remained harsh. Some days, she walked the streets feeling the pangs of hunger more sharply than ever. She faced moments of despair when no work was available, when the cold nights pressed against her thin blanket, and when loneliness threatened to overwhelm her. Yet even on those days, the thought of Imran's calm presence and the warmth of the cafe gave her a small measure of hope. It reminded her that kindness existed, even in a world that often seemed indifferent. One afternoon, as Rahima left the cafe after another quiet visit, a group of strangers approached her on the street. They looked at her with suspicion and hostility, asking questions she didn't know how to answer. Fear gripped her, and she felt the old instincts of self-preservation take over. But then she remembered the way Imran had treated her, not with fear but with respect. Taking a deep breath, she refused to be intimidated. She walked away quickly, her head held high, carrying the quiet confidence she had gained from those moments of genuine care. The bond between Rahima and Imran grew stronger with each passing day. Their conversations moved beyond immediate survival to broader topics: hope, dreams, and the value of human dignity. Imran spoke of his own challenges, the mistakes he had made, and the lessons he had learned along the way. Rahima listened intently, absorbing his words like a thirsty plant soaking up water. She realized that life could be difficult, yes, but it could also be meaningful, filled with learning, growth, and unexpected moments of connection. Imran never pressured her to make choices she wasn't ready for. He never made her feel as if she owed him anything beyond her presence and honesty. That distinction was crucial for Rahima. In the past, she had felt the weight of obligations and expectations from others, sometimes in ways that left her feeling trapped. But with Imran, there was freedom, the freedom to be herself, to speak her mind, and to dream without fear of judgment. One evening, after the cafe had emptied and the streetlights cast a gentle glow outside, Rahima confessed a small but important truth. "I don't know why you helped me," she said softly, her eyes fixed on the floor. "I offered something I shouldn't have, but you never treated me badly. Why?" Imran leaned back, thoughtful. "Because no one should be judged for their struggles. Because kindness is not measured by what someone can give, but by what they need." "You are more than your situation, Rahima. I see your soul, not your desperation." The words struck her deeply. For the first time, Rahima felt truly understood. She realized that she had been carrying the weight of shame and fear for so long, believing that her worth was tied to her ability to survive or to provide something in return. But here was someone showing her that her value was inherent, not conditional. As days turned into weeks, Rahima's life began to shift slowly. She found small jobs, helping at a nearby bakery, cleaning tables at a local shop, and started saving money for her own room. The road was far from easy, and she often stumbled, facing setbacks that tested her determination. Yet each time she felt herself faltering, she remembered Imran's gentle guidance, his belief in her, and the way he had seen her as more than her hardships. That belief became a lifeline, a source of strength she could carry with her wherever she went. Through their growing friendship, Rahima discovered something vital. The human soul could recognize another soul, even in the midst of suffering and hardship. She realized that trust, compassion, and understanding were not abstract ideals. They were real forces that could change lives. Imran's quiet presence, his willingness to listen, and his refusal to judge her had given her something she had long thought impossible: hope that transcended mere survival. By the end of that part of her journey, Rahima no longer saw herself merely as a desperate young woman struggling to survive. She began to see herself as someone capable of building a future, of finding dignity and meaning in a world that often seemed indifferent. And while the challenges of the city were far from over, she faced them with a newfound courage, fueled by the knowledge that one human being could indeed care for another, not for what they could give, but for who they were. And so, Rahima continued her visits to the cafe, not out of desperation, but out of connection. Each day brought small lessons, quiet encouragement, and moments of understanding that would shape the rest of her life. Through these interactions, she learned that compassion was not a weakness, but a strength, a bridge that could carry someone from despair to hope, from survival to life. Life outside the warmth of the cafe remained harsh and unpredictable for Rahima. Even though she had begun finding small jobs, earning a little money, and saving for a modest room, the city did not become any less challenging. Every day presented new obstacles. She faced long hours of work with little pay, harsh weather, and people who often looked at her with suspicion or indifference. Yet, in the midst of these difficulties, The thought of Imran and his unwavering kindness remained a source of comfort. Some days, Rahima walked through crowded streets with her stomach still aching from hunger, but her heart felt lighter. She had learned that survival was not just about finding food or money. It was also about finding moments of hope, people who reminded her that the world was not entirely cruel. Imran had become that reminder. Every time she stepped into the cafe, she felt a sense of peace, knowing that someone cared for her well-being and saw her as more than her struggles. However, even with this newfound support, Rahima faced moments of doubt and fear. She wondered if her reliance on Imran's kindness was appropriate or sustainable. "I cannot depend on him forever," she told herself on one particularly difficult day, as she walked back from a long shift at the bakery. Her hands ached, her feet were sore, and the city felt as though it pressed down on her from all sides. Hunger gnawed at her, but she refused to let it dictate her choices. She had come a long way from the desperation that had once led her to the cafe, but some nights, the memories of that first day returned, heavy and haunting. One evening, as she returned to the cafe after a particularly exhausting day, she noticed the city had grown quieter. The streets were dimly lit and shadows stretched across the pavement. Rahima's heart quickened. There were people on the streets whose intentions were unclear, whose faces she could not trust. Fear rose in her chest, but she forced herself to keep moving, remembering Imran's words. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward despite it. When she entered the cafe, she was greeted by the familiar warmth and the soft light of the lamps. Imran was there, as always, arranging pastries and checking the tables. Seeing him, Rahima felt a sense of safety she could not describe. She took a seat at her usual table, and he brought her a plate of food and a glass of water. There was no need for words. The gesture itself conveyed understanding, care, and a reassurance that she was not alone. As Rahima ate, she began to open up about the difficulties she had faced that day. "I tried to find more work," she said softly, her fingers tracing the edge of the plate. "But some places didn't hire me. Others treated me poorly because I'm alone. I don't know why life has to be so hard." Her voice trembled and she paused, unsure if she should continue. Imran leaned forward, his gaze steady and encouraging. "Life can be difficult, Rahima, but challenges do not define you. They test you, and sometimes they teach you lessons that can make you stronger. You are capable of more than you realize." His words struck her deeply. They were not empty encouragements, they were gentle truths. Rahima realized that she had often underestimated herself, believing that her past struggles made her weak. But here was someone who saw her potential, who encouraged her to believe in her own strength even when the world seemed determined to bring her down. Over the next few weeks, Rahima continued to face the harsh realities of city life. Some days were exhausting, filled with long hours of work and little rest. Other days brought small victories, a kind word from a shopkeeper, a moment of laughter with a fellow worker, or the satisfaction of earning a little money to save for her future. Through it all, she clung to the moments she spent with Imran in the cafe, where the world's pressure seemed to fade, replaced by understanding and hope. One day, a particularly frightening incident occurred. While walking home from the bakery, Rahima noticed a group of men following her. Her heart pounded and panic set in. She quickened her pace, clutching her bag tightly, but the streets were empty, and there was no one to help her. Fear threatened to paralyze her, but she remembered Imran's words, "Trust your instincts and move with courage." She took a deep breath and ran to the nearest busy street, where she could blend in with the crowd. The men eventually turned away and she collapsed on a bench, her body shaking but her spirit unbroken. That night, Rahima went to the cafe and shared the incident with Imran. He listened calmly, never showing shock or judgment. "You were brave," he said softly. "You trusted yourself and acted wisely. That is courage, Rahima, not the absence of fear." His words brought her comfort and reminded her that even in frightening situations, she had the ability to protect herself and make wise decisions. Through these challenges, Rahima began to grow stronger, both physically and emotionally. She started to believe in her own resilience and learned to navigate the city more confidently. She found that even when circumstances were difficult, small steps could lead to meaningful progress. And with Imran's continued guidance, she discovered the importance of patience, perseverance, and self-respect. Their conversations deepened as well. They began discussing Rahima's dreams and aspirations. She shared her desire to continue her education, to learn new skills, and to create a life where she could be independent and self-sufficient. Imran encouraged her to pursue these dreams, offering practical advice and helping her see that her goals were achievable. He never pressured her, nor did he make her feel inadequate. Instead, he became a mentor and a friend, someone who believed in her potential even when she struggled to see it herself. One afternoon, as they sat together in the cafe, Rahima spoke about her fears for the future. "What if I fail?" she asked quietly. "What if I work hard and still can't survive?" Imran smiled gently. "Failure is not the opposite of success, Rahima. It is part of the journey. Every challenge you face teaches you something valuable. Even setbacks are lessons. What matters is that you keep moving forward, no matter how slowly." Rahima absorbed his words, feeling a sense of determination building within her. For the first time, she began to see her struggles not as insurmountable obstacles but as opportunities to grow, to learn, and to strengthen her character. She realized that life was not about avoiding hardship, but about learning to navigate it with courage and integrity. Despite these positive changes, Rahima still faced moments of doubt. She wondered if her bond with Imran was sustainable, if it was fair to rely on his guidance and support. Yet every time she entered the cafe and saw his welcoming smile, she felt reassured. She realized that human connection was not transactional. It did not require repayment in the form of favors or obligations. Imran had shown her that genuine care and compassion existed, even in a world that often seemed indifferent. As the weeks passed, Rahima's confidence continued to grow. She became more independent, finding ways to support herself while still cherishing the guidance Imran offered. She learned to navigate the city safely, to advocate for herself in workplaces, and to approach challenges with a sense of calm determination. Each small success reinforced her belief in her own abilities, and each interaction with Imran reminded her of the power of kindness, trust, and understanding. One evening, as the cafe emptied and the streetlights cast a warm glow outside, Rahima reflected on how much her life had changed since that first night. She had faced fear, hunger, and uncertainty, yet she had emerged stronger, wiser, and more self-assured. She realized that the struggles she had endured were shaping her into someone capable of resilience and compassion. And through it all, Imran had been a steady presence, showing her that true care came from recognizing the value of another person's soul, not their circumstances or appearances. By the end of this part of her journey, Rahima had learned an important lesson. Life would continue to present challenges, but she now had the inner strength and guidance to face them. She understood that courage, perseverance, and empathy were powerful tools that could help her navigate the world. And most importantly, she had discovered that a single act of genuine kindness, like Imran's initial acceptance and understanding, could transform a life, offering hope and light even in the darkest times. Rahima knew that the road ahead would not be easy, but she was no longer the frightened, desperate girl who had walked into the cafe weeks ago. She was becoming someone who could face life with dignity, resilience, and hope. And with Imran by her side, not as a savior but as a mentor and friend, she felt ready to embrace the challenges ahead, knowing that even in the hardest moments, the human spirit could find courage, connection, and the strength to survive and thrive. Rahima's life had begun to shift in ways she had never imagined. The city, which had once felt cold, hostile, and unforgiving, was slowly becoming a place where she could see opportunities for growth and hope. The small jobs she had managed to find gave her a sense of independence, and each day she worked hard, determined to carve out a life of dignity for herself. But the real change, the one that reshaped her from the inside, was happening through the guidance and friendship of Imran. Imran never forced Rahima to act in ways she was uncomfortable with. He never judged her for the mistakes of the past or the desperation she had felt when hunger and fear had driven her to offer something she now regretted. Instead, he treated her as an equal, as someone capable of achieving more than she herself believed. His calm confidence and steady encouragement became a guiding force in her life. Whenever she felt doubt creeping in, she would remember the way he had looked at her that first night in the cafe, not with desire or judgment, but with recognition of her worth as a person. Rahima began spending more time thinking about her future. She wanted to find work that could provide stability and allow her to grow, rather than just survive. With Imran's advice, she started learning new skills. She spent afternoons practicing basic accounting at a local community center and learning customer service techniques, imagining herself in a small office or managing a shop of her own one day. Each skill she learned felt like a small victory, a step away from desperation and toward independence. One morning, Rahima decided to visit the bakery where she had been working part-time. The owner had always been kind, but Rahima felt nervous about expressing her desire for more responsibility. She wanted to prove that she could do more, that she was capable of handling challenges beyond basic tasks. Taking a deep breath, she spoke to the owner. "I would like to help more. I want to learn and contribute more to the business. I am willing to work hard." The owner looked at her thoughtfully, then nodded. "I've noticed your dedication. Let's see what you can do." Over the next few weeks, Rahima's confidence grew. She learned to handle inventory, manage customers, and assist in organizing the bakery efficiently. Each task she completed successfully reinforced her belief in herself. She began to save more money, not just for necessities but also for her own small room, where she could feel safe and independent. For the first time in a long while, she began to dream, not just of surviving but of living a life where she had control over her choices and her future. Through all of these changes, Imran remained a steady presence. He never sought to take credit for her growth, nor did he attempt to guide her in ways that felt controlling. Instead, he offered advice when asked, shared his own experiences to provide perspective, and encouraged her to trust her instincts. One evening, as they sat together in the quiet cafe, Rahima spoke about her aspirations. "I want to live a life where I am independent," she said softly. "I want to work hard and create something for myself, not just survive day by day." Imran smiled, his eyes reflecting pride and warmth. "That is the right path, Rahima. Independence is more than earning money. It is about believing in yourself and making choices that honor your dignity. You have the strength to achieve this. Remember, the journey is as important as the destination." Rahima's journey was not without setbacks. There were days when her body ached from long hours, when the city's indifference weighed heavily on her, and when loneliness pressed down like a heavy blanket. Sometimes she would feel fear creep back, threatening to undo the progress she had made. But in these moments, she thought of Imran and the way he had trusted her abilities. She remembered that courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to continue despite it. These reminders kept her moving forward step by step, day by day. Her social circle, though small, began to expand as well. She met other young women who were working hard to make their lives better, and together they shared experiences, advice, and support. Rahima discovered that connection and community were essential to resilience. The kindness she had received from Imran inspired her to be kind to others, offering encouragement and guidance whenever she could. Slowly, she began to realize that her past hardships had given her empathy and understanding, qualities that made her a source of strength for those around her. One day, as she walked through the city with a bag of groceries, Rahima noticed a young girl sitting alone on the steps of a building. The girl looked hungry and frightened, her clothes worn and torn. Rahima felt a pang of recognition. She remembered herself in that moment, feeling invisible and desperate. Without hesitation, she approached the girl and offered her food, smiling gently. "Here, take this. It's not much, but it's something." The girl's eyes lit up with gratitude, and for the first time, Rahima felt the joy of helping someone in need, of using her experience to make a small difference in another person's life. As the months passed, Rahima continued to build a life that balanced work, learning, and meaningful relationships. She found her small room, a space she could call her own, and furnished it simply with the savings she had earned. The room became a symbol of her independence and resilience. No longer was she a girl surviving day by day. She was a young woman taking control of her destiny, guided by her strength, her skills, and the mentorship she had received from Imran. Imran remained a consistent part of her life, not as a dependency but as a mentor and friend. Their conversations deepened in meaning, exploring topics beyond survival, ethics, personal growth, and the importance of living a life guided by integrity. Rahima often found herself reflecting on these discussions, applying the lessons she learned to everyday challenges. She discovered that personal transformation was not about a sudden change, but about consistent effort, reflection, and the willingness to grow despite setbacks. One evening, Rahima shared a personal reflection with Imran. "I never imagined life could feel this different. I used to think the city would crush me, that I had no future. But now I see possibilities I never thought existed. I feel like I am learning to live again." Imran nodded, his voice calm and affirming. "You are living, Rahima. You are building a life not defined by your struggles but by your choices. That is a victory far greater than most people ever achieve. Remember, transformation comes from within. You chose to grow, to learn, and to persevere, and that is why your life is changing." Rahima smiled, feeling a sense of pride and accomplishment. She realized that her journey was not just about surviving or escaping hardship. It was about reclaiming her dignity, discovering her strength, and embracing the possibilities of life. She no longer felt defined by the desperation of the past, nor by the limitations imposed by the city. She was shaping her future with intention, courage, and hope. Through her experiences, Rahima also learned the value of perspective. She understood that hardships were not signs of weakness, but opportunities to develop resilience, empathy, and self-awareness. Each challenge she faced taught her lessons she could carry into the future. And through it all, she carried the memory of Imran's first act of kindness, a reminder that compassion and understanding could change lives, even in the smallest gestures. By the end of this phase in her life, Rahima had transformed in ways that went far beyond her external circumstances. She had gained confidence, independence, and a sense of purpose. She had learned to trust herself, navigate challenges, and build meaningful connections. And most importantly, she had discovered that true mentorship and guidance came from those who valued her for who she was, not for what she could offer. Her journey was far from over. There would still be challenges, doubts, and moments of fear. But Rahima now faced them with resilience, determination, and the knowledge that she had the ability to shape her life. She had transformed from a girl who offered her desperation in exchange for survival into a young woman who sought knowledge, growth, and dignity. She had learned that life's true value lay not in what others demanded from her, but in what she chose to give herself: courage, self-respect, and the pursuit of a meaningful life. As she walked home from the cafe that night, Rahima looked up at the city lights with a new perspective. The streets were still busy, the noise still overwhelming, but they no longer intimidated her. She felt a quiet confidence, a sense of agency that came from knowing she was building her own path. And while she would always remember the hardships of her past, she understood that those experiences had shaped her into someone stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. In that moment, Rahima realized that transformation was not about escaping the past or pretending it never happened. It was about taking the lessons learned from struggle, embracing the guidance of those who cared, and using both to create a life of dignity, hope, and self-determination. And with each step she took, she felt a sense of pride in her journey, knowing that she was no longer merely surviving. She was truly living. Years had passed since Rahima first walked into the quiet cafe, her stomach empty, her heart heavy, and her future uncertain. The city that had once felt overwhelming and cruel now felt familiar, almost welcoming. She had grown stronger, wiser, and more confident, not because the challenges had disappeared, but because she had learned how to face them with resilience and dignity. She had learned that survival was only the beginning, and living with purpose, courage, and hope was what truly mattered. Rahima's small room had become her sanctuary. She had furnished it modestly, with a few personal items that reminded her of who she was and what she had overcome. A small bookshelf held the few books she had managed to collect over the years, and a desk stood near the window where she would often sit to reflect on her day or plan for the future. The room was simple, but it was hers, a space where she felt safe, independent, and free. Her work had expanded beyond the bakery. Rahima had taken on additional responsibilities in small shops and community centers, learning new skills and gaining confidence in her abilities. She had started saving not just for necessities, but for the possibility of further education or even a small business of her own. Each achievement, no matter how small, reinforced her sense of self-worth and her belief that she could shape her own destiny. Imran continued to be a part of her life, though their relationship had grown into one of deep mutual respect rather than dependency. He had guided her through difficult moments, celebrated her successes, and reminded her that her value was intrinsic, not tied to her circumstances or what she could provide. He never sought to control her path. Instead, he offered guidance and wisdom, encouraging her to trust herself and her choices. One rainy afternoon, Rahima found herself walking through the city streets, reflecting on how far she had come. The rain soaked her clothes, but she didn't mind. There was something cleansing about the steady fall of water, a reminder that life continued to move forward, washing away doubts and fears. She thought about the girl she had once been, hungry, frightened, and unsure of her worth, and felt a wave of gratitude and strength. That girl had survived, and she had grown into a young woman capable of hope, compassion, and resilience. Rahima often thought about the lessons she had learned along the way. She had discovered that life was not only about facing challenges, but also about recognizing the value of kindness, empathy, and connection. The smallest acts of understanding, like Imran's calm acceptance and patient guidance, had profound effects. They had given her the courage to rebuild her life, to pursue her dreams, and to see herself as someone worthy of respect and love. She also reflected on the moments of doubt and fear she had endured. There had been nights when she had wondered if she would survive another day, moments when the weight of the city's indifference had threatened to crush her spirit. But each time, she had found a way forward. She realized that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. Her life had become a testament to that truth, a story of persistence, learning, and quiet strength. One evening, as she sat in the cafe with Imran, Rahima shared a thought that had been on her mind for weeks. "I never thought life could feel like this," she said softly. "I used to think I would always be trapped in fear and struggle, but now I feel like I am really living. I understand what it means to have hope, to work for a future, and to believe in myself." Imran smiled warmly, his eyes reflecting the pride and admiration he felt for her. "You have earned this, Rahima. Not because I guided you, but because you believed in yourself and took the steps needed to grow. Transformation is never easy, but you chose to face it. You have built a life that honors your dignity, your intelligence, and your spirit. That is a victory far greater than survival alone." Rahima realized that her journey had not only been about overcoming hardship, but also about discovering the power of human connection. She had learned that trust, compassion, and mentorship could change the course of a life, offering hope when it seemed impossible. Imran had shown her that caring for another person's soul, not just their circumstances, was a profound and lasting gift. It was a lesson she now carried forward in her own life. Over time, Rahima began to reach out to others who faced difficulties similar to what she had endured. She volunteered at community centers, offered guidance to young women struggling to find their place in the city, and shared her story as a source of inspiration. Her experiences had given her empathy, patience, and insight, qualities that allowed her to help others navigate their challenges with courage and dignity. She realized that the kindness she had received was meant to be shared, creating a ripple effect of hope and transformation. One day, Rahima met a young girl at a community center who reminded her of herself years ago, hungry, frightened, and unsure of her own worth. Rahima knelt down beside her and offered a gentle smile. "It's okay," she said softly. "You are stronger than you think. You can find your way, and there are people who will support you along the journey." The girl's eyes brightened, and Rahima felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She understood in that moment that her life had come full circle. The guidance and kindness she had received had empowered her to help someone else see their own strength. As the city continued to bustle around her, Rahima no longer felt lost or invisible. She had carved out a space for herself, both physically and emotionally, and had built relationships based on trust, respect, and understanding. She knew that life would continue to present challenges, but she was no longer afraid. She had learned to face difficulties with courage, to trust in her abilities, and to seek out meaningful connections that nourished her spirit. Looking back on her journey, Rahima reflected on the first night she had walked into the cafe, hungry, frightened, and desperate. She remembered the fear, the shame, and the uncertainty that had gripped her. And yet, she also remembered Imran's calm presence, his unwavering kindness, and the way he had seen her as more than her circumstances. That moment had changed everything. It had shown her that even in the darkest times, human connection and compassion could light the way forward. Rahima realized that her life had been shaped by both struggle and support. The hardships she had endured had taught her resilience, patience, and determination. The guidance she had received from Imran had taught her the power of empathy, understanding, and mentorship. Together, these experiences had transformed her from a girl who merely survived into a woman who lived with purpose, hope, and dignity. As she walked through the city one evening, Rahima felt a deep sense of gratitude. She was grateful for the lessons she had learned, for the people who had guided her, and for her own strength and perseverance. She understood that life was not about avoiding hardship but about embracing it, learning from it, and using it to grow. She had emerged from her struggles stronger, wiser, and ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Her story became a quiet inspiration to those who knew her. Friends, colleagues, and even strangers who learned about her journey admired her resilience and determination. But for Rahima, the true reward was not recognition. It was the knowledge that she had reclaimed her dignity, discovered her worth, and learned to live a life guided by courage, compassion, and hope. Rahima often returned to the cafe, not out of necessity but out of respect for the place that had been the starting point of her transformation. She would sit quietly, watching the world outside, reflecting on her journey and feeling a deep sense of peace. Imran continued to be there, offering guidance and friendship, but Rahima knew that the true strength had come from within her own heart. She had chosen to grow, to learn, and to persevere, and that choice had shaped the life she now lived. And so, Rahima's story became a testament to the enduring power of hope, resilience, and human connection. It showed that even in the most desperate moments, when the world seemed indifferent and the future uncertain, one act of kindness, one person who believes in you, can change the course of a life. Rahima had walked through darkness and emerged into light, not because the challenges had disappeared, but because she had learned to face them with courage, integrity, and hope. As she closed her eyes that night, Rahima felt a profound sense of fulfillment. She had survived, grown, and transformed. She had learned to value herself, trust others, and embrace the possibilities of life. And she knew that whatever the future held, she was ready. She had found her strength, her dignity, and her soul, and nothing could ever take that away.